money talk didn't feel intimidating or off limits? What if it could actually become one of the most powerful tools you have to shape your future? Today, we're turning money talk from taboo to toolkit with my guest, Nik Agharkar. Nik is a financial concierge, attorney, and advisor who brings nearly 2 decades of experience helping individuals, families, and business owners cut through the jargon and make confident, intentional financial decisions. In this episode, he shares why so many of us avoid conversations about money, how shifting our mindset can change everything, and the practical steps you can take to protect more, grow more, and stress less. Let's get started, as this conversation always makes me nervous too. So let's find a way to make the money conversation one that brings us comfort and security. Don't forget to subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel, stream all episodes on all popular platforms, and like and share on our social media. Today is the day, live it on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you to those from 131 countries who have downloaded our episodes and listened to these incredible change-making stories. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I'm the host, Jodi Grinwald, and as I say every single episode, I interview the changemakers, the inspirers, and those who are disrupting the status quo in the best way possible. And today I have Nik Agharkar. Did I say that right?
Agharkar.
Agharkar. Okay, we're going to leave this in here because people do this all the time. We just talked about this, and I just did it to you, Agharkar.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't want to look down. I don't want to look down at my notes. I'm like, I know I could do this, and I couldn't. People get Grinwald wrong all the time. So Agharkar, I got it now, right?
Perfect.
All right. Awesome. So everybody who's listening, make sure if you say Nick's name, you say it correctly because he deserves that. We all do. It's our identity. That's our name is connected to who we are, right?
Yeah.
All right. So now that we got that straight, I'm going to introduce you. So Nik is a seasoned counselor with nearly 2 decades of experience guiding individuals, families, and business owners through complexities of wealth preservation, tax strategy, and legacy planning. I love the way you wrote that, preservation, I should say. And I love the way you planned that because you wrote that because nobody likes to talk about that word, finance, and we're going to get into that. Nik is known for his ability to uncover powerful, often overlooked provisions in the tax code. Nobody likes to talk about tax code. To develop creative compliance strategies that reduce tax burdens and support long-term financial security. He has degrees from Carnegie Mellon, economics and public policy, right?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there.
Oh, sorry. I'm saying that you have 2 degrees, one in economics and one in public policy, right?
Yeah. So it's funny. Where I went to school, if you didn't have 2 majors, you were slacking. So I majored in public policy and economics at Carnegie Mellon.
That's awesome. Wonderful. So I always go back to people's pasts, but before we do that, because I brought this up, why do people, including myself, do you think the psychology behind talking about finances, what is it that that's where we procrastinate the most?
Yeah, it's funny. My wife is in human resources, and even she tells employees, hey, don't talk about your salary amongst each other, right? So think about these things, right? Is that even growing up, your parents told you, oh, it's not polite to talk about money. Don't talk about money with people, right? But how do you find out if you're underpaid, right? How do you know if you're doing well, right? And I mean, that's the other thing is by not talking about it, we create these psychological issues too, especially because of social media. So you see these things, you're scrolling and you feel like your friends are doing much better than you, right? But the reality is they aren't, but you don't know that because you don't talk to them, right? I mean, in my profession, look, I work with a lot of small business owners. I work with a lot of people who outwardly appear very wealthy. But if you actually, kind of look behind the curtain, there are a lot of problems, right? There's a lot of problems with how they are managing and affording their lifestyle. And that problem is usually debt. And it's because people don't understand debt. And where does that come from? There's nowhere in school, right? There's no mortgage class in school. There's no how to file your taxes class in school, right? There's no how to open up a bank account, how to make a budget. None of this is taught to us, right? So when we get out into the real world, we look around and we say, well, look, I don't really know about this stuff. It seems really complicated. And also, if I screw it up, I could go to jail. So I should find someone else to do this for me, right? And that's great and that's fine. But if you don't even know what you need or, what you're trying to accomplish here, how do you talk to these professionals, right? How do you actually enlist someone that is trying to help or figure out what your problems are and the solutions, right? So for me, I start with, what are your goals? What are we trying to achieve here? Let's not worry about the tax code or finances or any of the complexities. Let's just talk, just human to human, right? What do you want? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to accomplish with your money and with your finances, right? And then we might get into things like, oh, well, I heard this, or, I saw some guy on the internet saying that if I have an LLC, it was a waste of my time because I'm a solopreneur. So it's, we might talk about some of these issues and talk through them, but ultimately working with me, you get that education, right? You get that understanding of, oh, I see how this all fits together because we're starting with something you already understand, which is what you want, right? If you can just basically make it really basic, really, really easy to understand how the code or the pieces of financial planning fit into your goals, you're going to do a lot better, right? You're going to understand what we're trying to do here. And so it's also, what I've started doing and thinking about when we talk about Changemakers is putting together a course, right? Putting together a small online course that I'll host on my website just to explain sort of these basic elements, right? How does a mortgage work? How do taxes work? What is an estate plan? How does that work? Right. So it's just giving people just more information because at the end of the day, what you'll find out is that none of this stuff is actually that complicated. Now, look, are there very complicated and convoluted financial products? Absolutely, there are. Don't use those. Don't touch them, right? Stay within something that you can understand. But if we can get you to a place where you can understand the basics, you can be really dangerous and really be able to help yourself and your family provide that legacy and make that change.
You brought up such a really good point. I'm thinking about, my kids are 23 and 26, 27 actually. And there was nothing in school that taught them about doing their taxes, when the taxes were due, when, any of the things that you mentioned. And so we are not preparing the youth to be, educated on how to be an adult. We throw them in the world and we say, here you go get a job, go to school
Yeah.
and go get a job. And then they're like, what do I do now? Like, how do I manage my money? And what do I do? If they're making really good money, they should be doing something with it to save it for their future. And a lot of times, obviously, they're spending it, right? Because they're not taught any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, look, and that's the thing is that's why we have to work with our kids, right? I remember a couple of Christmases ago, we were at a Christmas market and we gave the kids each a $15 budget. And my daughter wanted to buy one thing that was $12 and she was ready to buy it. We were in line for the register. And I said to her, look, this thing is $12. That's going to eat up basically your whole budget because there's nothing in this store for $3. So are you sure you just want this one thing? Or do you want to try and get other things with your money? And she thought about it and then got out of line. Now we were holding up the line. So I said, I'm sorry to the person behind the register. And she said to me, don't worry about it. I wish my dad did that. That's the point, right? It's teaching people and again, teaching your kids about the choices that you're making. Because again, all of this comes down to the decisions that you're making, right? With your money. But it's difficult to make decisions with your money when you don't have all of the information. Right? When you're not understanding that, I can't just put this on the credit card and not worry about it. That's, I have to pay that. Right?
This piece of plastic, it actually is attached to something, right?
Right. Exactly. Right. I mean, yeah, I've had that conversation with my kids when they've said, oh, just put it on the card. No, no. We don't just do that and forget about it. Again, you got to pay that every month, right? Because look, I teach people too about compounding interest. Right. When I talk to them about their retirement accounts, they ask me, how much more should I be putting away? We do this exercise where we look at, a conservative growth estimate for what's already in your retirement account. And then we map it out. If we just did nothing for the next 20 years and we just let this grow, what would you have? And if the result comes back with millions and millions of dollars, do you really need to put any more into that account then? Why don't we do other things with your money? Right. but there's no one thinking about these things for people, right? And people don't think about them themselves because they just hear, just stuff it, just put it away, right? Without any sort of thought or intentionality. And that's what I try and bring, right? Is we want to be intentional about the acts that we're doing because we're driving towards a goal. So if you don't start with a goal in mind, with an end in mind, where are we going? We'll just go all over the place. We'll be, wandering around without any sort of aim or North Star. So it's important to set that first, and then we work towards that goal.
So Nick, let's go back a little bit. And so let's talk about where you grew up and what led you, because numbers scare me. I am not a math person. So I love hearing how people wound up in an industry, in the sector that is all about, dollars, cents, and lots of math. So talk to me a little bit about where you grew up and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, so my parents are from India. So they came from India in the early 70s. My dad is a chemist, and he worked in big pharmaceuticals for his entire career. Now he consults with big pharma. So, they were able to do really, really well. And, look, growing up, the watchword from my parents was education. It was the only thing that they were absolutely uncompromising about. I remember in middle school, my mom would put me in summer school for the next grade. So as I was entering 7th grade, I would go to summer school for 7th grade, so that I would get a preview of everything that was about to happen, right? And I remember this because it was me and one other Asian kid and then a bunch of thugs, right? A bunch of kids that failed 7th grade, right? To come back. So like me and one other kid were the two nerds that were actually like trying to learn what was going to happen next. But that was important, right? This informed, sort of my work ethic and how I approach, any sort of task that I'm going to take on. But ultimately what happened was when I was a teenager, we had, my dad had done quite well for himself. And my mom was sort of looking at the bills and couldn't figure out, well, why are we paying so much in tax, right? There's no reason for us to be paying this much in taxes. So she took me to H&R Block and we told them, we'll work for you. Absolutely. Because they were offering 6 weeks of free training, right? So we did the 6 weeks of free training, never worked for them. But I started doing people's taxes as a teenager. And, look, the funny part is that when I started my legal career, I went into litigation, right? Because I wanted the action, right? So I moved away from numbers for the first, a little bit of my career here. And I didn't realize that everyone didn't know how to do their taxes, right? Until probably like my mid-30s. I didn't really realize that this wasn't a part of everyone else's childhood growing up, learning how to do taxes. So, I actually was in management consulting. So I had built a litigation practice. I sold it. I thought about, what I was going to do next. And I thought maybe I'd go to business school, but a friend of mine convinced me to come work at a consulting firm. So I was at a consulting firm, basically working with these executives. And, we would work on sort of their companies, strategy problems or P&L or technology problems. And after those meetings, these executives would pull me aside and say, but you're still a lawyer, right? Because I don't have an estate plan, or I have an LLC. Should I be doing something with that? Or I have a side hustle. Should I put it in an LLC? What should I do? That's when the light bulb went off for me, that if these people can't find good advice and they're just pulling me aside after a meeting to ask me questions, I think maybe there's a market here, right? Maybe there's something missing. So I started this, it's just sort of a law firm focused on asset protection and tax planning and management. I started getting investment advice questions, right? So I went out, I got my Series 65. I'm with a registered independent advisory house. And so our business is really a 360-degree view of your financial life. I call myself a financial concierge, right? If I don't have the answer, I can help find that person that does, and that will partner with us and build what we're trying to build here, right? But with me on the team, I as an attorney, as someone that understands the tax code, and then also a financial advisor, I can give a very broad picture and tie everything together, right? Because it's not one part of your financial life, it's all of it. And you have several different professionals, it can get to a point where maybe there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And so what I'm trying to do is streamline that approach and really give people actionable advice that they can really see the difference and impact in their lives.
Are you looking for a way to connect with a global audience? Join us on October 23rd for the Today's the Day Changemakers International Forum. Register for free at todayisthedayliveit.com. That's todayisthedayliveit.com. This one-day virtual forum brings together leaders, authors, CEOs, and entrepreneurs from around the world to provide powerful insights across 6 transformational panel discussions: Rising Through Uncertainty, The Burnout Breakthrough, Louder Than the Scroll, When Fundraising Follows Purpose, Becoming Who You Haven't Met Yet, and Entrepreneurship as a Global Connector. And also, sponsorship opportunities are available and customized to align with your organization's goals and ensure meaningful visibility. Options may include commercial spots during the forum, spotlight features on the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast, social media mentions and recognition, potential interview opportunities, and creative recognition that maximizes your marketing investment. By joining us as a sponsor, you're not just supporting an event, you're fueling a global movement of connection, collaboration, and authentic impact. Together, we'll strengthen one another, build powerful connections, and walk away with actionable steps that create immediate positive change, both personally and professionally. So don't wait. Secure your spot today at todayisthedayliveit.com.
And I think, when we first spoke, I was, and we were introduced by Andrew Stadelberger. So I'll give him a shout out here because he's an awesome person and we adore him. He also helps us with our foundation, the Plutter Kids Foundation. So I want to mention him. When he sent your information over to me to say, I think I might have a guest for you. I'm like, I've not really interviewed, somebody who's an attorney and handles tax and all of those, because we on Changemakers, we're not here to sell businesses. We're here to talk to people about how they're doing change making work. And as we spoke, I thought about this whole 360-degree view for a person instead of going to different people, and also the fact that you could tell about your authenticity, right? You could see how excited you get about the work. And about how you're helping people. Plus those executives, when they tapped you on the shoulder to say, wait a minute, you're still an attorney, right? It was because they trusted you. They trusted what your input was going to be. And that's all about connection. And that's the bottom line of Changemakers. Help people wanting to connect and people feeling like you're a magnet to help them in some way. So what does doing all of this give back to you?
I mean, honestly, it gives me a sense that I am making that change in that educational piece, right? I think part of the reason why I'm so passionate about this is that there's such an obvious fix to this problem by just building this into the education system, right? That there is a clear answer to this. And I do not know why we are not preparing children in high school. It doesn't have to be in middle school, elementary school. I've seen, we have one of these things for our kids, like a little debit card, right, for kids or whatever. And there are these products out there, and that's great and that's fine. But in my opinion, in middle school and elementary school, yes, they need to have some sense of money, but ultimately, mom and dad are going to pick up the bill, right? These kids aren't stupid. They understand that where the money comes from, right? So I think it's much more important, sort of that senior year of high school, to talk to these kids about, hey, you need to figure out your tax bill, right? And this isn't really a 5-6 year after college. This is next year. Next year you have to figure out your tax bill because you make some money, in a part-time job at college, right? Or let's say in college you start investing in crypto, right? Or you go play poker at a casino nearby. These are taxable events and you are 18. So, it's unless your parents are still claiming you as a dependent, and even if they are, right, even if your parents are still claiming you as a dependent, you may still need to file your tax return. Why did no one tell me that, right? Why is no one telling any senior? I bet you if you go to any senior in high school that just graduated and ask them, do you need to file taxes next year? They will have no idea.
I have to say, my daughter, it was exactly that. So when it came tax time, when she turned 18 and she was out of school and she was in her first year of college, I said, oh, tax day's coming up. You got to file your taxes. Did you make over what, we have to see how much you made. And she's like, file my taxes. Don't you do that? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
She's like, but I could be on your health insurance until I'm 26. Why is it that I can't be, no, that's not how it
Well,
works.
no, but see, that's the thing, Jodi, is that even if she's a dependent, right, you can claim her as a dependent. But if she made the money, you can pay the tax if you want, right? But she needs to file her own return because it's under her social, right? It's her, the employer paid her. So that's the other thing, is just even understanding the reporting system here, right? It's, people say like, oh, do I even need to file with the IRS? They're, gutting the agency. There's no one there anymore. Yes, you absolutely need to file. The audit system has been computerized for some time now. And guess what? The IRS already knows how much you made. How? Because your employer told them. The W-2 form isn't just for you, right? It goes to the IRS too. So your employer is reporting out how much money you made. They already know. So what the IRS is doing is waiting for you to tell them, hey, what deductions do I get back? Yes, I made this money. They withheld taxes for me, and that's great. But do I get anything back now? That's the question we're trying to answer when we're filing taxes. It's not, oh, but they already know how much I made. Yes, they know how much you made, but they don't know about all the other things you did during the year that might reduce your overall tax bill or increase it, right? So we need to be cognizant of teaching the kids these things. This is why I'm so passionate about it. It's because I work with adults, right, that are running successful businesses that have no idea about this stuff. And how much more successful could they be if they had this foundation first, right? So yeah, that's why I'm trying to make this change, trying to make this difference.
Do you have a common question that's asked you by those of us who are professionals that you see come at you more often than not?
Can you say that last part again? You were breaking up just.
I'm sorry. Is there a common question that people ask you that from adults that you get from professionals?
The most common question I get is what's a business expense, basically, right? So what can I deduct from business owners? That's what I get. And so the biggest thing I tell them is the law, right? Which is business expenses in the code are those that are ordinary and necessary. Ordinary means it's something that people in your industry generally spend on, and necessary means it furthers your business interest. If we think about that basic definition, it's very broad, right? So what can we fit in there? What can we do to sort of make more business expenses? And one of the things I talk to people about is travel expenses. A lot of small business owners, they love to go on vacation, right? I had a client go to the Maldives, right? Or I have a client going to Florida in 2 weeks. I tell these people, make meetings. Go half an hour every day, make a meeting, right? That you're exploring a new location, you're trying to give a talk, you're trying to do something for the business. If we can convert this trip, this family vacation, into really a business trip, what we've just done is we've covered your airfare, at least for you, right? And then if the other family members are in the business, maybe for them too, but also all of your meals, because meals while you're on the road, it's just like when you were a W-2, there's a per diem, right? So you can still get all of those expenses back, right? And then in addition, the other question that I pose to people is when I look at their tax return and I look at their investments and I see dividends and interest income in the tens of thousands of dollars. And I ask them, why did you do this? And often they don't know, right? Someone else is managing them and they don't know why they did that, right? But I explain to them, you're basically giving yourself this extra $30,000 salary in your household that you have to pay taxes on that you did not see a penny of. All of that money went right back into the market, right? They just reinvested all of that money for you. So this is a problem that you're not even thinking about or addressing, right? We should move those kinds of investments into tax deferred accounts so you don't have to pay taxes now when you're making a lot of money. Pay those taxes when you're retired, when you're not making any money and your income bracket is lower, your tax bracket is lower. But again, this comes back to education. People just don't understand how these things work, right? And they're at this point, right? Look, I'm working with people in their 40s and 50s. At this point, they're too embarrassed to ask, right? Because they feel like they should know it. But why? Why do you feel that way? It just because you're old enough, because you've made money. No one ever taught you this stuff, right? And you never had time to learn. So my big thing to clients is don't be embarrassed and don't be ashamed, because you're just like everyone else. Everyone else is in the same boat because we all got the same education around these issues, which is zero.
Right. And unfortunately, money makes the world go round. We can't turn the lights on without it. We can't eat without it. We're not in this barter system, maybe for a few things, but not for everything, of where we can just barter things. And like you said, the IRS knows more than you think they do, and they're waiting on you. And I think that's a great way to say that, because it's very, very true. And it's scary all at the same time.
The book is coming. The book is coming. Today is the Day, Live It will be published in late January 2026. Go to todayisthedayliveit.com to sign up and be the first to know when pre-orders are available. Live It is the Today's the Day Changemaker story. A story that began with one bold decision I made to spark a movement and create a platform for authentic connection and community. It showcases how a single choice can shift the trajectory of one life and ripple outward to transform the lives of many. Within these pages, you'll hear from 30 changemakers across the globe, from California to Uganda, sharing their voices, their defining shifts, and the impact they've made by choosing courage over fear, even when it seemed impossible. This isn't just a book. It's an invitation for you to believe in the power of one voice, your own. Stay tuned for the official author reveal coming soon, and don't forget to sign up at todayisthedayliveit.com so you don't miss your chance to pre-order. Because today is the day. Live It is more than a book. It's a movement.
You mentioned something that was important too before. It was about, they're dismantling the department, but it's automated, right? So what does that mean? What should people realize? If you can give us a little more info about that, because I think that, maybe they're lowering we have AI now, right? Like AI is like huge. Not everything needs a human anymore. And especially when you're calculating numbers, a computer, right, can do all of that for us.
Yeah.
So give us a little more on that.
Yeah. So the way that the audit system at the IRS is set up, it's statistical. Right. So what they do, and they're doing it right now with Form 1040. So they have pulled about 600 1040s that they are doing a line by line audit. Right. So for those, 600 people, this is quite painful. But for the IRS, this is data gathering. So what are they doing? They're looking at this group of 600 tax returns and they're finding patterns. Right. So they'll say something like, OK, if we have an adjusted gross income of $100,000, but someone is taking, a $30,000 business expense, that's a flag, because statistically speaking, in our range of 600, when we see a discrepancy like that, it's fraud, right? 90% of the time we found fraud in this 600 sampling group, right? So what they'll do then is they score that, right? It's called your diff score. I forget what the acronym stands for at this point, but the diff score then tells the agency, the computer spits out the diff score, and if it's past a certain threshold, you're going to get flagged for an audit, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're sort of in line with kind of what these expenses look like. And I tell people this all the time, as a business owner, what do you think gets flagged more? The travel expense or rent? Right? Obviously the travel expense, right? So if you can, just recategorize some things as rent, right? You're likely to be less prone to a computer flagged audit, right? So, but again, this is all public information. The IRS tells you how they're going to calculate all of this stuff. You just have to look for it, right? But if having that understanding, having that knowledge, now you can be a lot more confident when you're doing your taxes, because you understand, okay, I can't just claim willy-nilly expenses. I need to first of all, have documentation, right? That's the law. So you have the documentation, right? But now it's a matter of characterizing those expenses. So that's where a professional can help. But ultimately, what we want to understand is how do audits get flagged? And it's a statistical model. They look at a range of income versus expenses. And if you're outside that range, if you're maybe taking a bit too much, you'll likely get flagged for an audit. Whereas if you're staying true to the documentation that you have and you're really working with someone just to characterize how those expenses should be classified, you can do really, really well and be confident that you're not going to get audited.
So in this work from home type of life that we are living now because of COVID. And thank goodness I love work from home sometimes, not all the time. It gets a little boring every once in a while, a little lonely too. You can take a portion of, right? Am I wrong on this? If you're renting or if you own the home, can a portion be utilized for your office space? I think it's an important question because so many of us are doing it.
Yes. So there is a home office deduction. There are two methods to calculate that. The first is easy. The second is much harder. So the first way to do it is you just look at a floor plan of your house and you look at what the square footage of the office is. Now, it has to be a dedicated office space, right? So it can't also be a guest room. So you have to have a space in your house that's a dedicated office space. And that square footage you multiply by $5, and that's your deduction, right? That is the straight line, easy way to do it. The other way to do it is actual expenses. So if you're renting, right, you look then at what the total square footage is versus the rent, right? And so now you can get $1 per square footage for rent or mortgage, right, for your house. And then you look at the square footage that you're using for the house and you multiply that by the dollar per square footage. So now that's the sort of that one portion of the deduction. Then you can look at how much of the electricity are you using, how much of the utilities, the phone, the internet, but those are usually expenses that come along with it anyway. But anything physically involved with the building, you have to apportion out how much is for the business. And this requires meticulous record keeping, right? So now while this second method, as you can imagine, might yield a larger deduction, it's a lot more involved, a lot more work, and a lot more documentation, and may welcome a little bit more IRS scrutiny. Well, that's still sort of to be seen. But ultimately, the easy way is probably enough for you to realize some benefit from working from home. But you can only do that if you're working for yourself. If you're working as a W-2 employee for an employer, there is no home office deduction.
Yeah. And so that's very interesting. And I appreciate that because I went the first route that you just said because the other route seemed just very difficult. So I totally, although I'm starting to think with the right documentation, it may be worth it.
It might be worth it, right? And that's what I tell people is that you want to do both methods and figure out what's better, right? Ultimately, I would say 90% of my clients come back and just say, forget it. I'm just going to do the easy way.
Exactly.
Doing all the other work to figure this out might, cost you more in terms of time than it's worth. So, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship because I feel like, you're obviously an entrepreneur. You spoke about starting your own firm. You kind of breezed over that, but I know when we spoke, we chatted a little bit more in depth about it. When you started your business in the beginning and then you sold it, right? You grew it, right? You grew it from nothing, right?
Yep.
To something big enough to sell it.
Yep.
So what is the characteristics? I'm saying outside of your industry, and it is a general term. What is the characteristics and what do you need in order to, for those listening that are like, I'm trying, it's not happening. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I would say keep that growth mindset alive because every failure is just tuition, is how I look at it, right? So we all went to school, right? We all learned lessons. So in every failure, I try and think about it as, well, I paid a lot for that education, right? So now, but that's the point, right? Instead of wallowing in the loss and saying, I can't believe that didn't work out, I'm so upset, all of that, reframe it and say, that didn't work out, but what did I learn? What did I learn? I shouldn't be doing that, right? I should be focusing on this. And I understand now why that went wrong because I didn't do XYZ. So next time I'm going to do XYZ. At least take something away from the money you've lost, right? I've started other businesses that have completely failed, lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? That's education, right? That is now I paid for that knowledge of, okay, that business sucks. And I should really think about sticking towards some core competencies. And also, if I ever did that again, I would make a bunch of changes. But it's important to really understand those lessons and then act on them, right? Is actually change the behavior so that you don't keep making the same mistake.
I really love what you just said, and I've never heard it this way about, and I say, a lot of people say failure. I say falling. I follow the Brene Brown model that we don't fail, we fall, because I feel like failing sounds so definite. Where falling, you can get back up. But what I do love, the word you use is look at it as tuition, We do pay, right, so that we can learn when we go to
Right.
school. And sometimes it's the school of hard knocks. And there's tuition to be paid for the school of hard knocks. And I like that. That's a really, I might have to borrow that term because I think
Please
it's a really
do.
good one.
I think it's a really good way to think about it, right? That if you lose money, don't think about the loss. Think about, I paid for something. What did I get? Right? What did I actually get? What did I now understand better about business, about how things work?
I'm 100%. I love that. Where can people find you who want to learn about what your whole concept, all that you're doing?
Yep. So anyone can email me. It's Nick, N-I-K, at crownpointtax.com. I'm also Nick at shorehavenwealth.com. But you can also find me on LinkedIn, Nik Agharkar. Just type in my name. I will pop up. I'm actually going to start doing lives as well on LinkedIn to sort of answer some more of these questions. But yeah, I mean, anyone can check me out on my websites and find me on LinkedIn.
Nick, is there anything we didn't cover today that you want to share?
No, I think we really hit on everything that I hope to accomplish here. And I really hope to make a change in people's lives and providing them this really important education that you just don't get anywhere else.
Yes, because we could all use a little bit of savings on the money that we are making,
Absolutely.
especially in these times, right?
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt. So, Nick, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to share more about what you're doing, a little bit more of your story. And I'm still sitting here thinking, wow, you had to do summer school leading into that next grade. I feel for you.
Thank God it's over now.
Yeah, but you know what? Look what it did for you. Like when you think about trajectory of the things that we do, where we'll be in 5 years will be a very different place than where we are right now. That's what always happens. So
always, yeah.
So hopefully we'll still be doing the things we're doing now, just even better and helping more people. That's the goal, right?
Yeah, always.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thank you. I so appreciate your time today, and I look forward to sharing your story with everyone. And I hope one more time, give everybody your LinkedIn is under your name as a Nik Agharkar.
Nik Agharkar.
Right?
So no C, N-I-K, Agharkar, and you'll be able to find me there on LinkedIn.
Awesome, Nick. Thanks again. And I'm going to say what I say at the end of every single podcast. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what small or large steps are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goals? Thanks again, Nick. Have a great week, everyone.